Okay, well, we have a good crowd, so let's go ahead and start. Today is our last open office hours of the reporting season. We're happy to help through the 2030 commitment inbox and also through the 2030 appointment, but hopefully we'll answer most of your questions today and you guys can get rocking and rolling on the rest of reporting. So I expect like 20 more portfolio submissions by the end of today. So today, Matt is going to walk through a portfolio or adding projects through bulk upload really quickly, and then we'll take whatever questions you all have. But before that, just a reminder that the reporting deadline is April 30th. We did extend that from last time, from previous years because of COVID and all the things that are happening in the world. But we also recently we released our guidance to create a sustainability action plan. So whether your firm hasn't created one or you all are looking to update your sustainability action plan, this document creates or provides guidance so that you can start looking at how to set your firm up for success in the 2030 commitment. And a sustainability action plan is obviously unique to your firm, but it does provide some parameters and some hopefully inspiration to get you guys going. Just a reminder of the types of projects that you would be adding to the DDX. Any active design, any project that is in an active design phase. Anything with a HVAC system or changes to the envelope would be included, and then any interiors project which has lighting design, we would also expect you all to report those types of projects. And one last reminder, because we were getting a lot of questions about this, but make sure when you are adding data to your projects that you are backdating this reporting date that's circled in green. It will automatically show the date of like the day that you're adding projects. So 2021, make sure to backdate that to 2020 if you're adding projects that you want to be included in your 2020 project. So if something was in schematic in October of 2020, make sure that you have a date that reflects, even if it's just like 12/31/2020, just make sure it reflects that so that it is pulled into your portfolio when you are reporting. Okay, well, that's it for me. I'm passing it over to Matt to get into the good stuff.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Paula. So hopefully you guys are feeling in a pretty good place in the reporting cycle. We've had the opportunity to hop on a bunch of those 2030 one-on-one appointments in the past couple of weeks and speak to some of the folks on the line, and also just a huge number of your guys' colleagues. It's really exciting. And we welcome the opportunity to work with you guys and help you troubleshoot things one-on-one, but certainly for anything more general or anything you're comfortable sharing with 50 so of your closest friends, we encourage you guys to ask questions today. Today's not super structured per se. I do want to show you all a new feature. This is particularly relevant to folks who are doing bulk import. If you've been on a couple of these calls already this year, you know that there have been some questions about that. There were some suggestions that came out of these calls on a way to improve that process. And so I'm going to demo that today. Hopefully it's going to simplify for folks who use the bulk upload process to edit their project and submit their portfolio. So now you can do that all at once. I can also go through creating a project in the UI or creating a project or submitting your project through the UI here, which I mean the website. If that's helpful, you guys just let me know. You can drop it in the chat or pop on camera. Anything is fair game. We want to make sure that this last session gets you guys through the finish line for reporting during this really busy time of year. So the big thing we wanted to show you today, I'm super excited about. Again, this is an idea that came directly from folks who have joined these calls, and our development team worked really swiftly to implement it for this year's reporting cycle, is simultaneously bulk importing your projects and submitting your portfolio at the same time. So the use case for this is a company that's reporting lots of projects. I would say probably like 100 is a really good threshold for using bulk import, but whatever your platform, wherever your company is at, totally fine. If you're only doing 2, you can use this feature as well. What this does is it updates all of your project records and it submits just the projects in your Excel spreadsheet as your annual portfolio submission. So this is ideal, especially if you're a company that has a third-party database that you use internally that you're extracting data from to satisfy the 2030 commitment reporting criteria. So to do that, you have to first be a company administrator, which a lot of folks on the call are, just recognizing names and some faces, which I love seeing. Going to the company tab, which again is where you go if you're going to submit your portfolio, but also where you go if you're importing projects. Again, the bulk import only available for admins. So just like before, you click on the import button and you'll see some updates. So if you've spent any time on this page, you know that this bottom tile that says portfolio submission is new. And that's what's going to let you submit your portfolio and and update your projects at the same time. So just like before, you're going to select your file. All right, make sure that it's a CSV file. Make sure that all of the information, the formatting in the file matches our bulk import guide. You can link directly to the bulk import guide here. You can also download the sample CSV, which has all of the header names formatted exactly how you need to format them. Formatting is critical if you're doing bulk upload, right? So this is great for detail-oriented folks. And we can walk through some of those tips and tricks later. We may even run into some errors when I upload this file. If you were only updating your projects, if you're not also trying to submit your portfolio, you would just click this green import button and it would bring in your information. And that would be consistent to what the import process was before. What I want to show you is that you can also now submit your project and it will save the active and complete projects from this CSV and only this CSV as your 2020 portfolio submission. So if you want to do that, you can click the box that says, would you like to submit these projects? And then you can select your year. Again, we're doing 2020. And when you click import, and it can take a moment. Right now, it's like reading all of the data. You're going to get that validation. This is showing that all of your projects, here I imported 50 projects. I had no errors in any of my rows, and I'm getting a confirmation that my import was successfully completed. If for some reason there was an issue, there would be a table underneath it that would say what the issue name is and which row was affected, so I could go back to my spreadsheet and fix it. A really common one is calling laboratory. Laboratory is a use type. It officially needs to be inputted as laboratory - recommend use of lab 21, which is, I realize, a little bit confusing. Another is capitalizing headers. Those should be in sentence case. Again, that's all in the project help guide. So in addition, though, to getting the confirmation that your import was successfully completed, you also get confirmation that your portfolio has been submitted, and you can see that your badge is available for download, just like if you went through the process of manually submitting your portfolio. It's one and done. So again, this is great for folks who have an internal database and they're just trying to transfer the information over. And I know there are a number of folks on the call who are in that position. You can confirm that the information saved as you intended by navigating to the Reports tab and selecting your reporting year. And you're going to see a total count of the projects and the GSF included, and overall PEUI and LPD values. This is top line information for your project. So one thing you might know is that this is showing that 48 projects were included in my analysis. That's because in that file where I had 50 projects, 2 of them were listed as on hold, and so those don't count to your portfolio, just as they don't within the website UI. Another place you can go to confirm that your annual portfolio submission logged correctly is by scrolling down to the bottom of the company tab, and there's a company resource section. Whenever you submit a bulk import successfully, it is going to save a copy of that CSV file to this section. So here you can see that we submitted on 4/13 at 3:41 p.m. or 3:39 p.m. on April 13th and who submitted it. Whenever you submit your portfolio submission, which we did because we did a 2-in-1, it also saves the file of your CSV, which includes all the information about the projects that were already included. And this is a great resource to go, whether you're doing the bulk upload or you're doing it through the website, to be able to download that file and use that as your data point for if you do any internal analysis in addition to what you see on the reports tab. So I really wanted to highlight that feature today, specifically for folks who are interested in doing bulk upload and who've maybe been holding off since we did preview this a couple weeks ago. And again, thanks to folks who shared the feedback and recommended the process improvement. I hope it's helpful for folks who are using bulk import. Again, it came out of this call. We definitely want to hear your guys' feedback throughout the process about how we can make the tool work better for you and your company. That was the big update that I wanted to share with you all today. I want to flag as well that when you submit that project, just make sure, same as within the UI, that for date reported, you are listing it as a 12/31/2020 date. Paula and I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to make sure that your reporting date information is matching the reporting year that you want to submit your portfolio in. It's no different than the old system, except that it now shows it as a calendar date instead of just the year. There's a ton that I can go through today, but I want to make sure that I'm hearing from you guys what you need. So if there are any requests, go ahead and drop them in the chat or pop your camera on and let us know if you guys have questions. This is really time for you.
Well, I'll go first, even though I have what might be an embarrassing question. This is Ellen from Leo Daily, and I'll admit that this is our first time reporting on the DDX, and my first time really getting in the weeds of using the DDX. I think my colleague Zach is on too. So my perhaps stupid question is, I'm listed as the administrator and have been able to see reports before, but right now when I look at reports, it says I have nothing submitted or I have nothing to see. My question is, am I not going to be able to see my sort of overall firm report until I submit?
That's correct. And the current implementation of the system, and this is a piece of feedback we've received a couple of times and we'll be looking at changing. In the current implementation of the system, it's pulling project records that are stamped with the reporting year, and that stamp is applied when you submit your portfolio. So right now there's not a way to, in the reports tab, preview what that's going to look like, but we've heard from you now and others in the past couple of weeks and in those one-on-one appointments that's something you guys would like to see. So we are going to work on improving it. One note, when you do submit your portfolio, you can submit your portfolio multiple times. Just make sure that you're toggling on all of your projects and the complete information. So okay. Another option, but yeah, sorry about that, but noted.
Will we be able to see it like immediately after we submit?
Yeah, so you guys saw how quickly mine uploaded. I did this in real time. None of those projects were in the system before. I created 50 projects that are called like demo 1, demo 2, demo 3. And as soon as you guys saw that, it uploaded in here. And so when I set to 2020, a little bit of lag, it was there. So it populates really quickly. If you're going through the UI, it'll happen pretty much instantly. If you go through the bulk upload process that I just walked through, it can take just a couple of minutes, but it shouldn't take more than like 10 minutes if you do run into that lag.
Okay. And did I understand you correctly when you said you can submit multiple times, that we could technically submit today and then submit again by the end of the month with a revised project list?
Yeah, that's correct. The most important thing, if you go through and do that, is that, and these are great questions and more in the chat, which I'm loving seeing. The most important thing is that you're submitting your complete portfolio every time. It's not cumulative, right? It's not like I submitted 2 projects on Tuesday and now 2 projects on Thursday. If you want to do that when you submit on Thursday, you need to check that you're submitting all 4 of those projects in this equation. So For bulk upload, if you do the process I just showed, it means make sure everything is on your spreadsheet with the updated information. And if you're doing it manually, which I can show right now, it just means checking all of those boxes. So here's what that looks like. So I just went through back to the company tab, submit portfolio. I selected 2020. I'm getting a flag that's saying you already submitted this. That's because you all just watched me submit a 2020 portfolio, right? So when I click continue, by default, any project that I have in the system that its status is active is automatically going to be checked, provided that the most recent design data was reported before 12/31 or on or before 12/31/2020. So if I had a project that was active in CA in 2019, when I go into the UI, when I go onto the website, it's going to want to pull that forward because it's saying, hey, this is still an active project, right? And that's the threshold for reporting to the DDX as any project that was active in design at any point during the year. So by default, those active projects are all checked. You can expand the view to see more. So this is showing all of those demo projects that I just brought in, plus some projects I already have in this system. And then underneath the active, it's also showing where you have projects that were completed and the date that the most recent design phase was reported. So for example, I know that I want to include these demo projects that have a 2020 date. So I'm going to manually toggle those on. And for anybody going through the UI, you're going to want to do that. Confirm that this snapshot is your whole portfolio, click continue. And again, you'll be able to download your badge. You can download a CSV. And when you go back to the company page and you scroll back down to the bottom, like I showed you all before, the old file that I had previously submitted that you all watched me submit is here. And you can look at the timestamp and the name to figure out which came first. So this 7/39/33 came first. And that's just because of the time zone on these. It's not tied to your specific time zone. It's tied to where our server is, which is about 3 hours ahead of Eastern, 4 hours ahead of Eastern. So this more recent file represents my new portfolio. And if you download and open that, you'll see all of that project information. Also, the reports tab is now updated based on where those timestamps are, based on those projects that I just marked as being part of the 2020 portfolio. Does that all make sense? I'm going to assume that it did until I hear otherwise. But yes, you can resubmit your portfolio multiple times. Just make sure that you submit your whole portfolio.
Hi, Matt. I have a question. This is Sam Elliott from HCM in Baltimore.
Hi, Sam.
So my question for you is, we had a whole slew of projects that we're going to be batch uploading, but the way we were working on it is reaching out to PMs and having them fill out their own project information. We had a series of interiors projects that were literally a one-to-one switch out of existing lights for new lights. Now, by the definition of criteria that would make a project need to be counted, it seems like that would fit the bill. But for these particular projects, we did not have any sort of energy model data, any energy data modeled for them. So in that case, what should we be doing? I'm just curious because I believe at this point, well, what should we, what's the best course of action there?
So I'm going to punt that to groupthink a little bit, because what I'm hearing is that it's an interiors project. So you're looking at LPD, which usually is being pulled off of like ComCheck or a similar document. And although you're changing your lighting, it's a one-to-one, so you're not seeing design improvements. That's an accurate statement, Sam?
So my understanding, I was not a member of this project, but my understanding is that the fixtures were being changed.
Okay.
So it could be that there was an upgrade from, fluorescent to LED, but I wasn't made aware of whether or not this was the case. And I was also, again, there wasn't any sort of modeling done with this project. I'm not even sure if there was a contract that was run on it.
Yeah, again, I think I would punt that to the group. How are you guys tackling when you're in that situation? Anybody on the call? Just unmute.
Hi, this is Diane from PCA in Boston, Massachusetts. So we do some interior work as well, and kind of figuring out where to draw the line of what we include and what don't include is a lot trickier for interior projects. We definitely include lighting switch out, in part because the definition of what the interior designers have impact on as far as building energy use is pretty light. And so we do try to make sure that they're included in the conversation. And that's really like, that tends to be a big part of how they're included. So where we draw that information from is I typically talk to the designers about, whether they're working with a rep or a lighting designer. They are often running calculations to just make sure that we have the right lighting levels. And that same individual, usually a rep, can actually run and provide the LPD for the new design. And so the baseline, we typically use the default in the project because nobody's really doing any sort of calculations on the existing and documenting what the true existing conditions are. So we don't have great detail on the delta, but we do at least have an understanding of where the proposed design is as far as the LPD use. I'm not sure if that answers your question. I hope it helps.
It does. I was kind of thinking something along the same lines myself. And I appreciate it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Diane. So a couple of questions in the chat. One is related to the building codes, which seems to mostly just go up to 2016, specifically requesting the 2020 New York code. We do rely on some partner analysis for the codes, which is why there is a lag. And we realize that this year's lag is affecting a good number of folks. I've added that to the list to track down. We also are aware that there is a need for the updated Title 24 California code, an updated Oregon code, an updated IECC code. And so we are working on getting those. And if there are other codes that you guys want, you can definitely drop them in the chat here. We do save those, or share them with 2030commitmentaia.org. Or when you're within the DDX, there's a feedback icon that pops up on every page. And you can give us a ranking. We do receive these and process them. And then after you tell us how much you love it, you can also comment about your experience and say, hey, I'm on this page. I really want to be able to report that my project is 2020 New York City Building Code. We just don't have it. And that'll go to us and then we'll put it in our queue to try and track that down. But sorry that we don't have it now. In the meantime, I would recommend picking a code that feels similarly progressive to you. And I don't know what that necessarily is. Others on the call might know, and they can drop it in the chat. But we do publish the code equivalency within the help pages. So if you go to the circle icon with the question mark at the top of the page, and it's lagging a little bit for me in real time because let's see how it always seems to go. And you search for code, it should be the top result under design energy code. And there at the bottom of this article on like how to pick your code, there is a table, and this table lists the code reduction that we use within the DDX for projects that don't have an energy model. And that can help you sort of pick one that feels analogous to the specific code you're building for. So sorry about that, but I have it noted and we will try to do better. We realize it's a little imperfect. That's a segue into another question we have, which is doing a quick review of how to add a project that doesn't have an energy model. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really quickly by creating a new project. This project is going to be called By default, your project status is going to be active. We're going to give you a project number automatically assigned that's unique to your firm based on the time you set up your project. You can override this information if you have an internal database or accounting system that you use to assign project numbers. Just make sure that the project number is unique. You can't have multiple projects with the same project number. One place where we tend to see that is with interiors projects, where firms are associating the project number on their internal database with a specific client and then doing multiple projects for that client under the same code. We would just need you to add like a .01 or .02, et cetera, after the name. So we're going to set up that basic project information. I'm going to try and move quickly. And you do need to specify whether you're in inch pounds or international standard. Save and continue. Quick note, this is related to bulk import. Just a funny peccadillo of the system. When IECC 2018 was added to the system, it was added with a dash. All the others are just a space. We're going to work on improving that after the close of the reporting cycle, so there's a little bit more consistency. But if you're doing bulk upload, make sure that you punctuate it exactly as it's punctuated in the help guide, which should match how it's punctuated within the tool. All right.
Matt, while you add some of that information, I wanted to take a second and answer a couple of other questions so we get to everyone. There was a question about whether the sustainability action plan, you needed to submit it with your portfolio. You don't. I'm sorry if I created confusion earlier on the call. Your sustainability action plan should be submitted 6 months after you join the program, and then edited or revised or reviewed every 3 years at least. But you don't have to do that in order to submit your portfolio. Those are two separate things, two separate uploads. So sorry if I caused any confusion around that. And then there was another question around submitting your portfolio for several years, but you can only see your 2019 portfolio. We did have a couple of glitches with the reportings tab when we transferred data. So we're working on a fix right now to make sure that you can see those previous reports and that they're accurate. So apologies for that inconvenience, but we are working on that.
Awesome. Thanks, Paula. So for this project, I just created the basic project doing the setup. Again, if you're doing this in the UI, you'll only need to do that once, which is nice versus having to do it every time. So for a project that hasn't been energy modeled, you do need to have a design phase data record associated in order for it to get pulled into your portfolio when you go to submit. So you can click track design data or the add design data button under design phase data. If that project will say it's concept, we're going to backdate this. Again, if we want it to be included in your 2020 portfolio, it is important that the date fall in the calendar year 2020 or before. So at this point, right on this page, it's asking you if you have your predicted energy use of the project has been modeled. Just say no, right? If you haven't done the model, just simply respond no, and we will apply the code equivalent based on the code that you provided when you set up your project. You can, if you want, still toggle on other information. So perhaps even though you haven't done an energy model, you know that your project has photovoltaic. So you can go ahead and note that to track for your own records. It won't affect the performance of the project in terms of how it gets calculated and reported. But it means you can have more complete project information, which is of value to you and your project teams. You can also track window to wall ratio and embodied carbon. But let's just go ahead and say, you know, for the purpose of this demo, that you don't have any additional information other than you know what your project is, you know where it is, you know when it started, and you know that you've been working on it. All you need to do is create the project, log the design phase, make sure that it's reported as 2020, and hit save and go to project dashboard. And at that point, it's going to assign a savings from baseline. This is an estimate. Again, it's why there's a lag in the period between when new codes come on the market and when we include them in the DDX is because we need that third-party analysis to give us a % reduction estimate. And that's what it's going to go ahead and assign. So if you don't have an energy model, that'll be the calculation. Gina, I see that you have your hand raised. Hopefully a question about this one.
It is, yeah. I just wanted to jump in before you moved on. Thank you for walking through that process. We've really ramped up our energy modeling in the past year. And what we're finding, most of our projects are in Washington State, so I'll preface with that, is that the estimated percentage reduction when it's as code is actually higher than what we're coming in at our energy models.
Yeah.
Even though projects are perhaps LEED Gold, some of them LEED Platinum, and it's just the discrepancy is a little concerning in terms of overall reduction that we're going to see 2020 versus 2019 report.
Yeah, it's a really it's a really good question. It's not an uncommon question, and it's been true for years. So I started working with this program a little over a year and a half ago, and I know from my predecessors that this was also a question and challenge that came up. So in terms of what you can do for your data, right, I'd encourage you to trust your energy model and your energy modeling team. It may be worth having sort of a conversation about what assumptions are being made. So you might be factoring in, or your modeler might be factoring in higher plug loads than are being used in the default baseline, which could be sort of leading to that discrepancy. So in some cases, you might need to retool or adjust your baseline. One example that I'll flag in particular is the DDX, if you're creating your project directly in the tool to set your target, sends basic information to Zero Tool, which uses the CVEX 2003 database to establish the baseline for the program. Mm-hmm. The information that we're sending to Zero Tool is specifically your use type and your zip code, because they're applying climate analysis, right? We're then accepting from them any default assumptions that they associate with a specific use type. So for hospitals, for example, the Zero Tool defaults to a minimum of 1 MRI machine, which throws your energy load up, right? So I was working with a 2030 commitment signatory the other week at this point, and they were like, our baseline is just astronomical. Like, it's so high and that it makes it look like the building is this exceptional. So the inverse problem that you have. Mm-hmm. And it was because although it was like a 3,000 square foot facility, it was factoring in this 1 MRI machine. And by going to Zero Tool, they were able to pull that out and then enter a custom baseline in the tool. And that's why we have the custom baseline field. One of the reasons we have the custom baseline field in the tool. So that might be a thing to look at or talk about with your modeling team is, are there assumptions that are going into the model that could also or should also be going into the baseline that can adjust the numbers? So that's a path to feeling more confident about your numbers. In terms of, so that's about you and your data, right? In terms of what we do with our data and recognition, and the 2030 commitment is like a no penalization program. Like we're carrot driven in many ways more than stick driven. It's voluntary. You guys do this. We appreciate that effort. So when we do our analysis, which gets published in the annual report, and when we recognize and determine sort of companies that are meeting the thresholds, so the 70 and 80% reduction, we do adjust the numbers, and this has been true for the life of the program going back to 2009. We adjust the numbers in terms of awarding status by bringing up projects to code equivalent. So your portfolio, what you see in the system, will still have that skewed value. But if you're on the edge of like the 80% reduction, for example, we'll adjust that and recognize that you shouldn't be penalized for doing an energy model, because the energy model is a critical pathway, but penalizing users for it in the context of the program would put people in situations like yours as not seeing the value in doing it when the value is for you more than it's for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think that's kind of what we were feeling was, well, why are we energy modeling?
Yeah, which is not what we want, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, we want you guys to be doing the energy models and trusting those numbers. But also having those conversations with your project teams and with your modelers and sort of understanding what they are. And in many cases, looking at that baseline makes a lot of sense.
That is something that we'll look at. Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Related to talking about Zero Tool, since we're on the subject, I got a message from, I think, Kristen. Yeah, Kristen, feel free to jump in whenever, but she's had the issue of going directly into Zero Tool to get their baseline and target and having a different number than what is in the DDX. Can you clarify that?
No. That's a really interesting problem. I would love more information on it, and also would be glad to set up time to talk with you to sort of walk through it. It should be passing similar information. One exception is data centers.
Yeah, we're just looking at basic Office.
Interesting. Should not be doing that.
Yeah.
And the zip code is correct, and the Office characterization is
Correct.
the same.
Yeah, I tried different projects too,
Interesting.
because I thought it was strange.
All right, well, I will make a note to look at that. And if you have like screenshots or can like even reference like the sort of project number that you're looking at in an email to 2030commitment@ai.org, we'll take a look at that and follow up.
Will do.
It should be, it should be similar. It could be an issue anywhere along the pipeline. So we'll look into it, but thanks for bringing that to our attention. On the subject of energy models, which was not the subject, but it's a gentle transition. Does anybody else think today feels like a Friday? Just me? All right. So the question is, if you're using Woofy Passive as an energy modeling tool or any other energy modeling tool that's not supported in the dropdown, there are two options. Well, there's one option and then a request. The first is when you select yes, under energy modeling tool, there is an other category. Go ahead and select other and then add a note to your project notes that just mentions that you're using Woofy. In that case, it's not ideal. The request, right, is if you're consistently using tools, and Woofy is one that as we've been having these one-on-one conversations, I've heard a number of folks bring up, drop it in that feedback box or drop it in a 2030commitment@ai.org email, and we'll track those and we'll pull them. If we get enough folks requesting it, which is a fairly low threshold, we can add it to the drop-down menu and then also to the bulk import and API, et cetera. So for now, flag it as an other. I would encourage you to create a project note that specifies what system you're using. And I would encourage you to share that information with us, and we can work on adding it to the drop down so you guys have that as an option. So in terms of the notes, I'm just going to go into a project so everybody understands what I'm referencing. When you're on a project dashboard and you scroll down to the bottom, there's a project notes field. These appear in order of when they've been reported. So you can add a note that just says, we used Woofy for the, I don't know when we would use Woofy. I'm going to say schematic. Okay, so you can leave a note and save it. It'll show authorship, and it will show date, and they will sort in order of most recent to least recent. There's not currently an opportunity to delete or edit those project notes, but that's something we can look at adding as a future enhancement to the system.
Matt, we have a question from Michael around embodied carbon and whether embodied carbon will carry over data entered from the previous phase. Currently, energy use fuel sources do carry over, but embodied carbon does not.
Awesome. Thanks for the question, Michael. Yes, and it should happen soon. It should happen in the next week or so. So for everybody to understand what we're referencing, what Michael's referencing, I'm going to open a project. And this project exceptional performer, has energy modeling. So there was an energy model completed using Autodesk Insight 360 in November of 2020. So when we go to add design data, by default, it's saying no, but it's saving. It's cute when the system doesn't do what I would expect it to do. The system should be saving that information even though it says no. It should be recording that project data. So when you go to pull it forward, it's saving your energy model, sort of design phase to design phase. And it assumes that you haven't updated your model basically, rather than setting it back to your code equivalent. So it inherits the information. So let's see if it works now. Yes, sweet. So it works now. So when you open it and you say yes, it's inheriting all of your information. What Michael is referring to is that in the current system, when you go to do embodied carbon, it's not pulling that design information forward, design phase to design phase. You have to re-enter it every time. We are working on making a switch, so that should happen. So if you have a phase where you're tracking, reporting embodied carbon in schematic design, when you go to create your next design phase, by default, it will say no, but if you open it up to say yes, it will have your information saved, and that should be in place in the next week. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, Matt. Thank you.
Perfect. It's a great question. And again, it's something that came up in one of our one-on-one calls. And so we immediately sent it off to the developers and they were like, we got it. So again, the feedback you guys share here, the questions you're asking here, not only are we trying to give you guys answers, it's also helpful in giving our developers direction on how they can improve it. So for the question about bulk import, yes, it has been updated and it is ready to go. I gave a demo at the top of the call, but I'll do it again now because it just takes a moment. So if you're a company administrator, you can go on the company page, click import, and it'll bring in this workflow. And now we've added the portfolio submission feature. So when you go to choose your file, make sure that it's a CSV file and make sure that your formatting matches the, make sure that your portfolio formatting matches the sample CSV that's provided here and the bulk import guide. Characters really matter, right? Capitalization can throw errors. So if you just want to update your project information, you can add the file and then click import. If you also want to submit your portfolio based on the data in that file, you can click, would you like to submit these projects on as your portfolio submission? Select your reporting year 2020. You guys have now seen me submit the portfolio twice on this call. So you're also seeing that I'm getting this disclaimer saying, hey, are you sure you want to resubmit your portfolio? It'll change your data. I'm comfortable with that. So I'll click import. It'll take a moment. It's confirming that the success is complete. If it wasn't, it would show you where your errors are. And then it's also confirming your portfolio submission. You can download your badge and confirm all of that information back on the company page. Bulk import, again, it's really finicky. You have to match characters exactly. You have to match formatting exactly. You know, once you get it, it's sort of easy, but those errors can throw issues. If you're having problems, you can reach out to 23commitment@aia.org or schedule one of the one-on-ones and we can help you through it. But it should be up and running.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Rima. You have projects that are anticipated to be complete in 2020, but are still in CA. When you change the year on the project, the action doesn't change from mark complete to track data. Is there any way to get around that? Great question. So if I understand that question correctly, the answer is no. So let me run with an example. So this 1011 South Street project in my company page is showing mark complete as a tile. When I go into that project, that occupancy year is currently showing 2022. In your case, you're saying that it's showing 2020. And when you update it, it's not changing the status. So I'm going to go ahead and knock that back to 2020 so that it matches your example case. Little journey. So now my use case matches yours. So in this case, it's showing the 2020. The reason it's showing mark complete has less to do with the predicted occupancy year than it does the most recent design phase reported. So when you go back into this project, which now matches yours, my most recent design phase was construction administration. So the system is assuming that the next time I touch or change this project, I'm going to want to mark it as having been completed. You don't have to note that the project is still in CA. It will pull into your portfolio submission automatically if the project is still active. And you can confirm that it's active with the buttons at the top. So it'll still pull in even though if the most recent design phase was in 2019. Or you can reset that. But in your case, what I would encourage you to check is if the most recent design phase reported was a CA. And then if it was, you can either not worry about it because it'll still pull into your portfolio, or you can submit a second CA phase for 2020. It's okay to have multiple records with the same design phase. The system does allow it.
Okay, that's really helpful. Can I ask you to clarify one thing? So if a project was in CA in 2019 and still in CA in 2020, the project manager theoretically would not have to update that project for it to be counted in the portfolio?
Yes, in theory and in practice.
Okay.
But what I wanna flag there is, while the system defaults to that, right? Because that was something a lot of folks requested. I'm also hearing that a lot of firms are saying we still want every project team to touch every project in the reporting year, and so it does come down to sort of how your company wants to administer that. So some companies are saying every year touch the project and make the duplicate record, totally fine with us. And others are saying we're just going to stay on top of if these projects are active, complete, or on hold, and then trust our project teams. Also fine with us. It comes down to how you want to govern your data in terms of how you use the DDX. But yes, on any active project report with a design phase up to 12/31 of the reporting year will by default be pulled into your portfolio submission for the reporting year. You can always toggle it off, right?
Okay, right. That's really
Great
helpful.
question.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Paola, do we have any other questions on your end?
I don't see anything. I'll do a quick run through to see if there's any that we might have skipped over, but feel free to just jump on the mic and let us know what your experiences have been, what you need help with.
Hi, this is Susan Hickey. I do have a question, and it's a fairly simple question. It's our first year reporting. We have some projects that are outside the year 2020, and I'm assuming that they are showing that they were completed earlier, and I'm assuming those do not need to be reported. Is that right?
So when you say outside the year 2020, you mean they're projects that were from like 2019 or 2018?
Yeah, they were from 2019, yes.
Okay. And they're in the system, but they're complete. You guys aren't working on them anymore?
That is correct, but it's our first year reporting. So we just kind of went through our entire portfolio.
Love that. That is super ambitious, and I love that as a story. And congratulations also on your first year of reporting. Yes, those projects from 2019, if they're complete and no longer active, don't need to be reported in 2020. If you have your complete portfolio from 2019, you could submit that. You can go back and submit portfolios from past years, and that way it'll populate your reports tab. So since you've done that work, that might be something that you're interested in doing. When you go to the company tab, and you go to submit portfolio, you can select a reporting year as far back as 2010. So in your case, you could do 2019. And that's only going to pull in, so you can see this list is significantly shorter than the list we saw for 2020. It's only going to pull in projects that are active or complete, and it's only going to pull them in if they had design data in 2019 or before. So for example, like you're seeing this complete project from 2017, it's by default not included, but if you wanted to include it, you could. So an option for you, since you've done that work, is you could go back and submit your 2019 portfolio, and then go ahead and mark those projects complete, which you can do on their individual project pages. Just toggle them off to complete. And that way they won't by default pull into your 2020 portfolio, but they shouldn't be included if they're no longer actively in design.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Great question. And again, congrats on first year of reporting.
We've still got about 8 more minutes. Oh, we have a question come in. Love that.
Ooh, is the project target determined by the baseline of the year the project is completed, the current date, the beginning of the project, or the current date? So, layers. I believe the project target is set by the date that you create the project, but you can override it. I believe that's how the default works. In terms of designing your project though, I would encourage you to design with the target for your anticipated date of occupancy. So if your project is going to be, estimated date of occupancy is 2025, then your design target would be the 90% reduction, not the current 80% reduction. But I think in the system, it's going to default you to the 80%.
I see. So we're also reporting for the first time, and we have various conditions on our projects. One where we started the project, say in like 2018 or 2017, but it finished construction in 2020. So we're reporting things, anything that was active in 2020 then, but we didn't know which target date, like would it be the beginning or the end of the project? So we're just starting the, the entry, the data for it now. So if it,
yeah.
So we would go with the like 80% rejection.
Yeah, since your project is being delivered in 2020 and you're creating the project in 2021, it would be that 80% number. So I think in this case, you're right. I will say here, this is the caveat I'm going to throw, right, is that I have had conversations with other firms who have decided for themselves that they're setting their target based on date of start versus like date of delivery. And so while I am advising that you go with date of occupancy, because you're going to be, especially when you're looking into the future, Maya, you're going to be tracking those projects that are, that you will be reporting for several years. While I am encouraging you to focus on that date of occupancy, I know that there are firms out there who as just a way of administering this program and building culture and having uniformity in their data say otherwise. There is a choice that you get to make here, but I would, in your case for these projects, strongly encourage you to use the 2020 date.
Okay. And then we have some that, maybe they started a few years ago, but they're ongoing and they won't be occupied till like, 2022 or something.
Yep.
For those, we would go for the construction date if we can.
Yep, I would encourage you to go for those because they're going to be in your portfolio for the next couple of rounds. Worth noting, if the projects have a target that's already been set, you can log that target. So the system's automatically going to tell you what the target is, but you can specify that target if you have a design target for the project that's been determined and communicated to project teams.
Yeah, that's what I wondered, like when we go to the target, it says, you have an option of 2 things to click, and one is to meet the 2030 goals, it's gray above it, and then there's some other one that's set that's some other amount sometimes. That has yeah. Sometimes there's a number in there that was just generated automatically. We weren't really sure.
Yeah. So,
Clicking the one on the left.
and you said this is your first year reporting.
Mhm.
Interesting. So, a pattern, a piece of behavior is if projects had been created in the old system that were selected as will be modeled and a target has been set. When those migrated, they would have populated a unique target. If you're creating projects natively, it shouldn't happen. So I would love to know what those projects are so we can troubleshoot it with the development team.
Okay.
But it is a place for that target. If you do have a project target for your team that you want to set that everyone is working toward, you can log it there sort of regardless of the year. But if you're using the default, I would encourage you to default to the value for the project when it will be constructed, because it's going to haunt your portfolio for a couple of years.
Okay. Yeah, actually, we did start to upload the data before the website changed, but we didn't. This is our first time actually reporting. So.
Okay, so that might be it. But again, glad to follow up if that's helpful. If you can just send me information about the specific project, we can look into it.
Okay.
All right, we have a couple of questions in only 3 minutes. If we model the energy use of the existing condition of a gut rehab project, can we use the result as a custom baseline? You could. I would make a note of it. In terms of whether or not you're meeting the target for the program, it is still going to compare it against that 80%, but you could definitely record that as a unique target in that situation where you're renovating an existing building. So in terms of like how it maps back to sort of program compliance, which I hate as a phrase, it's going to use the program targets, which is 80% for whole buildings and 25% for interiors, but absolutely that would be a great instance to use the custom target to say where we want to be making, or the custom baseline where you want to make that performance, I think. We have just 2 minutes left. Diane, who helped us out earlier, posted a long question in the chat. She's also going to post that to Basecamp. So if you guys have feedback and advice for her on sort of how you guys are tackling that, I would encourage you to check that out. If you're not already a member of the peer-to-peer network group, which name I always butcher, but Paula always gets right, you can email us at 2030commitment@ai.org and we will add you to that network. It's about 800 users strong, I think, at this point. Sometimes questions get answered and they're great discussions, sometimes they don't, but I encourage you to post them there, especially if you're looking to understand, like Diane is, what other people are doing and how you guys are tackling these projects, because you guys are in the weeds and living this day to day. Paula and I are just here to help you, but not architects ourselves. I'll also note that we do have the 2030 one-on-one appointments. So those are a great opportunity to connect with us if you need last minute, and you can always reach out to 2030commitment@ai.org. We usually get back to you within a day. Sometimes it'll take 2 depending, because it's me and Paula plus a couple others, but we're largely your 2030 team. And don't hesitate to reach out, big or small. And then of course, any feedback you guys have, good, bad, otherwise, please definitely share it with us. We're really committed to making this a tool that's helpful for you guys. And then finally, I want to thank you all for being here and participating on today's session, as well as the past 3. We've really enjoyed hosting them and being able to have you all help answer each other's questions. Gina, I see you doing that in the chat right now, so thank you. So hope that's been a value to you guys, but it's a delight for us, and we feel privileged to get to work with you all. So thank you.
And thank you, Matt, for all of your help. If you guys want to send this session to somebody, or if you just want to review what Matt went over with the bulk upload earlier in the call, or you might have missed that, we will post this online by tomorrow morning on our YouTube page. So subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Good luck with reporting.
Thanks.
Bye, all.
Thank you.